So let's start off talking about Dell Technologies World. And I'm going to dive in specifically and talk about Project Apex. And I'll just start off another event that used to have a massive sprawl, multiple days, tons of speakers. Generally was in Austin for a long time, then moved to Las Vegas. And now it has moved to our home office, or in your case, the offices that you domicile in there in downtown Austin. But good event. But this year, the show and all the upfront work that we as analysts did, alongside Dell, had a lot to do with the company's migration to consumption-based services. So this week, the company rolled out its Apex portfolio. And this is a series of as-a-service offerings, starting with storage, compute, moving towards things like PC, data processing, SAP, and like we've heard from a few other companies, namely HPE, but even if you look at what AWS and Azure are doing, moving towards everything in a consumption-based, format. So, coming straight out the gate, Apex is really focusing on two things. The two biggest things I'll say is the data storage and the cloud services. A couple of other things definitely were interesting. The custom solutions that Dell continues to do, along with the Apex console, which is going to be the portal that is going to be a very important kind of epicenter of the Dell Apex offering. And the reason I really point that out is because what we've got going on is we've got these two converging forces, Pat, and it's basically we've got the big public cloud players migrating more and more and more and more, and you see my hand moving if you're watching this live, but if you're listening, you can't see that. Moving more and more towards prem. And then you've got all the prem providers. You got the Cisco with their new Cisco Plus, you got HPE, you got now Dell, all kind of saying, hey, we understand there's still a lot of workloads that need to go on-prem. We're going to build a public cloud consumption-like offering, and we're going to move it more and more and more and more and more towards public. And so my take was Dell is off to a good start. It's a company that you have to take very seriously. It's got a world-class sales force. It will be able to use that sales force and that gigantic customer database to be able to sell these solutions early on. I like the fact that they're starting small with a few services, because even if you look at AWS started off with one thing, storage, and then it went to compute, and that was how it effectively grew its business. Same thing's going to happen here with Apex. I'm going to leave a little oxygen in the room for you, Pat. That's kind of a running joke on this show for all of our first-time listeners. But, I just want to say this. Dell is kind of looking at the market in two ways. Dell wants to be seen in the market as a force to be reckoned with in competing with the big public cloud players. I think in time, I never would write off Michael Dell and say he will not be able to accomplish this. I will also say there are very formidable prem-based competitors that are doing this, that have been doing this in some cases, Lenovo with TrueScale, HP with GreenLake, for years now. They understand a lot of the bumps and bruises, the complexities, what customers want, and Dell needs to get over that hump first. If Dell can get over that hump, prove its business model, build a control plane that people like, scale it up, certainly the company knows how to do services. Certainly the company has a big backlog of subscription from its, financial services business, but it's going to be a road to hoe. I want to kind of hear about it in the earnings. I want to start off hearing about customer wins, and I want to start to see the financial growth. And then eventually I want to see if the company can compete and convince the market that the hybrid environment starts with your IT prem provider and not your public cloud provider. But in the end, Pat, I think it's going to end up being a mix of both.
As a service for everything is what customers want, whether you're a large company, mid-sized, or a VSB, a very small business like us. And that's where the market's headed. And this is where Dell is taking it. A couple things to keep in mind on this, things that really came out here. First of all, Dell's scale. You look at their market share as it relates to server, storage, networking, HCI, PCs. It's gigantic. So the scale at which Dell Tech operates is very different from the scale that some of the other companies are operating at. So they have scale and they have breadth of product line. A couple things that I was really impressed with. So first off, the language that they used was understandable. They used the language of the cloud, of the public cloud, which quite frankly is is the language that I don't want to call it the winning language, but it's become a language that customers can understand pretty well. And one really interesting thing that I was thinking through here when I stood back, Apex is getting so close to the public cloud when you look at the deal and what they're doing with Equinix. So if you are if you're a Dell Tech customer and you don't want to have on-prem infrastructure, you can put it inside of Apex. And guess what? You're not going to get two bills. You're going to get one bill, and it's going to be from Dell Tech. Dell wasn't the first to use Equinix, but Dell's the first one to have one throat to choke while using Equinix, and that's what customers want. When you sign up for AWS or Azure or GCP or IBM or Oracle Cloud, you get one bill, not two bills, and people pointing their fingers at each other. It'd be interesting. The other part is the 14-day guarantee. Okay, and I think that is mind-blowing for something that's going to be on-prem and new. Now, if you already have hardware or infrastructure involved, right, you can essentially tap into that in less than 5 minutes at an infrastructure. But the interesting thing I was thinking about was, what if Dell invested CapEx in installing hardware and capabilities ahead of when a customer actually asks for it, and you've got a single pane of glass. Isn't that kind of like the public cloud now? It absolutely is, but don't tell anybody, Daniel. I don't think any of these on-prem companies who are putting these as a service opportunities want to get there until it just shows up. But I just find that incredibly fascinating that literally, if they pre-bought and put CapEx and put infra into Equinix ahead of the curve, and then put a credit card and a sign up, you have the public cloud, baby.
Yeah, you really do. I mean, it'll come down to ownership. Who owns the actual infrastructure? If Dell owns it, it basically is a public cloud. If it becomes something that the user ends up owning the infra, and like you said, you are right. I do think that will be a hard road to go down. It'll be very competitive, but like I said, I've got a lot of confidence in Dell. Everything Michael does is very well thought out. We've seen it. A lot of times people might not understand it, but trust me, he's brilliant.